Hi, everyone. Can you please do a test to make sure I can hear you?
I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear. Great. I can hear you too. Thanks. Okay, it's 12. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 12 o'clock noon, so I'll go ahead and call this special school board meeting to order. For roll call, please note that myself and Director Zander are joining remotely via Zoom, and all other directors are present in person. Do I have a volunteer to read the mission and vision statements, please?
The DeCore Community School District, we embrace student learning and well-being as our fundamental purpose. We will, in partnership with our students, families, and community, make the world a better place. The mission of the DeCore Community School District is learning, thriving, creating our legacy. The vision of the DeCore Community School District is DeCore Community District will be a collaborative, innovative, learning-centered organization, empowering students to embrace their personal strengths and create their future.
Thank you. Next, I'll ask for a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved to approve today's agenda as written.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. For new business today, first we have an approval of personnel listing. Dr. Cronin, can you please give us an update on new staff that we want to be approved to get to work right away?
Yeah, we've got a volleyball coach and a para, or a couple at a para hire, but the one that we've waited on for a while is we do have a candidate who's accepted and is recommended to be the new director of buildings and grounds. So we're excited about all our new hires, but especially excited to have a director of buildings and grounds with an anticipated start date of September 30th.
That's great news. Are you able to tell us a little bit of background about Mr. Johnson?
Oh, yeah, I could just tell you Curtis Johnson is our recommended candidate for Director of Buildings and Grounds. Lives here in Decorah, I think, a couple blocks from the high school. Children went through the school. Curtis works for Casper, so has a lot of experience in the field, and then is also, I'm gonna get this wrong, but maybe a captain on the fire department.
Right.
But checks a lot of boxes, and we're excited to have his experience joining the district.
Wonderful. Does anyone have any questions about these personnel updates?
All right.
Okay.
We're to move to approve the personnel agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, hearing a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And the second item on the agenda under new business today is the first reading of board policies 103.
There's a whole list of board policies. 103, 1031, R1, and I'm not gonna read them all. There's two groups of, I would say, two big things. One is the annual policies, ISAB recommends that you go over every year. So that's mostly in the 100. There's two in the 100s on needs assessment. I highlighted in yellow the changes there. We just added some language. And then there's a bunch of policies in the 500s about family engagement. And there's really not any changes until you get to 506.1. We added some content in there. But other than that, and these are all recommended by ISAB. So those are just kind of grouped together as an annual review. The other two policies, 501.3 is compulsory attendance. This is based on the new state law, and 501.9 chronic absenteeism and truancy, also based on the new state law. Wording coming directly from ISAB and as recommended, recommended by ISAB. So these are first readings. We will have a second reading, anticipate having the second reading at the October meeting.
And with, I guess my only question, and it's not a suggestion to change any of the language in these agreements, I'm just curious. I'm wondering with the new attendance requirements do we have the admin support that we need to carry through with the new recommendations?
Well, I want to say yes, but it's going to be more work. I know there's the principals we're looking at. We've had a few discussions. We're still having more discussions about this, but we're having discussion about how Power School can be used to once the child's met the threshold of 10% in a grading period, that could just generate an email that then the administrator approves, like this needs to go out because the child is at the 10% threshold and they're now under the definition of chronic absenteeism at the 15% threshold. Then the 10% kind of gives you a notification that could be auto generated. The 15% is it's got a name, but it's like the meeting with the parents in the school about, coming up with a attendance plan. So yes, Cindy, there's going to be more time, more meetings required. We had a nice conversation with Chuck Crane, who's the Winnebago Assistant County District Attorney, on what his expectations are. But if you've noticed in the law, it says we are required to notify the Winnebago County Attorney when a child is missed 20% of the days in a grading period, and that's regardless of reason. So they might be ill. If they're students that have unfortunate, illnesses that they're out for long periods of time, you would still have to notify. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get charged with anything or fined, but that law says we have to notify. We don't get to have the discretion to say, oh, we're not going to notify Ron's family because we know, but we're not sure about Brian. So it does treat everybody. And that then becomes a certified letter. And there's talks in some districts looking at just the cost could be for a large district. I think Dubuque was using the number like this could cost them a couple $1,000s a year and just mailing out certified letters. So I think it's, the law is well intended, and it's the interpretation that's going to be a little bit of where does the capacity, the people time to do it, and then the cost just to send out more certified letters.
Yeah.
And this would include excused absences.
Yeah, that's the point. Like we're going on a trip, once in a lifetime trip, or, in this community, if mom or dad is a Luther College professor and there's a J term and you go to part of that, but also if I'm in the hospital with a bad illness for 10 days, those are absences. The state doesn't define an excused or unexcused absence.
And is there any provision in this for if a student would do something like go on a J term and they go through Canvas through the learning management system and they still turn in their work, but they're not actually at school?
There's no provisions for that. And again, we're notifying, we're having at 10%, we're notifying, hey, your child's chronically absent. At 15%, we're setting up the absentee plan. Now, if if they're over for J term, we would just say, we know you're, doing a J term thing or whatever. But the 20%, we're required by law to notify the district attorney. Now, is the district attorney going to, they have the ability then to fine a parent for having a minor child truant.
Hmm.
And that part I can't speak to, but
If a student was working through Canvas at home and had a reason to be there and they're turning in their work, they wouldn't be truant. They would still be.
well, they're not in school. We're
It's
required to
literally-
call them.
It's literally physically in the building.
Yes, yeah, we're not a virtual school like we were during the pandemic. It's attendance. But I mean, these are all great questions, and this is,
So does this mean that Cam and Clayton Ridge are now illegal?
no, it doesn't mean.
Since
because-
they will never be inside
Yeah,
the school
yeah.
for any of those 180 days?
As a clarification, there are school districts in Iowa that are allowed to have permission to be virtual schools. The Clayton Ridge and the CAM are the ones that we think of. I think Iowa City has started doing it, but Des Moines, that means they've gone through the process to be certified virtual schools. During the pandemic, and we were given special permissions from the state to provide virtual learning just to our own students. And that we're not allowed to do that anymore. But that was probably the difference. If you're thinking, we did in 2022 allow some students to, again, we were talking about this just before the meeting. In 2022, when people were sick and we didn't want COVID being spread, we wanted them to stay home and we wanted to make that easier. And so the state laws reflected that.
If that had happened again, this should be amended to take that into consideration. It would have,
Yeah. We're dealing with the law today.
right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I no longer expect any sort of internal consistency from the Iowa legislature.
Well, good point. Good point.
I noticed in Brad Hurst's last Viking that he put in there all the different codes that they use for absences. Is that new too, or is that something that we've done in the past and I just hadn't noticed?
We've always had codes for absences. I think we've got a few new ones this year and they're kind of being a little bit more specific on them. But, one of the questions that came up as a clarification, so we've got cross-country today in Cedar Falls, those students are leaving early. Well, they're on a school-sponsored thing, so they shouldn't be coded absent. They should be, it's just an extension of what your curricular or extracurricular activities are.
Mhm.
So that was we've had lots of discussions, but that was one of the points is make sure we don't, no one gets an extra absence that they shouldn't have.
Mhm.
So, and then how we're gonna track this with portions of the day is another challenge, especially at the elementary, at elementary, we just take attendance in the morning. We don't take attendance every period.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of layers with this.
And it's
But-
20% of the school days of the whole year, or is 20% of the school days we've already gone to?
So you're supposed to establish a grading period. So as an example, if you've got a trimester, that's roughly 60 days. And
Okay.
so it's gonna be, and then it kind of resets after the trimester,
Oh,
but,
okay, so it's a grading period.
so it's grading period. And so in a 60-day trimester, at 10%, at 6 days, you're gonna get a letter that says you're chronically absent. At 15 days, at 9 days, which is 15%, you would then have a meeting set up, and at 12 days, which is 20%, you would have, we're then required by law to notify that thing. The Winnebago
Mhm,
Associate County Attorney,
mhm.
so. So differences and I know attendance since COVID has not been as good before, so I think it's a well-intended law. It's just how it gets interpreted and how it gets implemented is gonna be as is always, is the challenge.
Well, I guess I would encourage, this is a first reading today, but I would encourage board members before our second reading and, you know, pending approval or not at our next regular board meeting to really read through this and be thinking of questions. Because we want to make sure that our staff are supported. And one of the things that I heard Dr. Cronin say was that with these additional steps, there is additional expenses too that need to be considered with the direct mailing of certified letters.
Fortunately, I don't think we have any discretion to make any changes, even if we want to.
Yeah, the policy is
Yeah.
gonna be pretty set, but I certainly be able to answer your questions and
How
having
how
staff
it's
at
supported
school.
is a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And having staff at school that can support the law by, like Cindy says, all the extra work that might be.
We have somebody who works with our truancy right now.
yeah, that would fall with mostly with the guidance counselors and those folks.
Mhm.
Social worker, yeah.
And parents have been made aware of this new.
The letter just went out today, co-signed by myself and Chuck Kernan. So, yeah. And there might even be an article or two in the paper, because it's gonna pick up for folks.
Okay.
It was in the Viking this fall as well.
Mhm.
Kicking off the year, I know Brad put it in the Viking, one of the first ones. So
Yeah, but remember, I know that board members are copied on that, but I don't think, elementary school families are
No.
not receiving that communication. So that's targeted toward high school families and board
There
members.
there was a communication towards elementary, but it wasn't the same method. So
Yeah. But it sounds like everyone is being informed today or in the days to come as they receive that communication.
Well, and with everything, you always, sometimes different formats and multiple attempts are always needed to make sure as many people can get the message as possible.
Well, I make a motion that we approve the first reading of board policies 103 and other ones that were listed on our agenda. I'm sorry,
Just 500s.
yeah, the 500 series.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we find ourselves at the end of our agenda, so I'll officially adjourn the meeting. Thanks for joining, everyone.